Hello, everybody. It's me, Ian Rodriguez, with the 28-day challenge, the 28 days through the Gospel of Matthew. And today is day 23. You are reaching the finish line, friend. So keep it up. I hope that every day you have just gained more and more insight as the Holy Bible has come alive for you, as we have dove really deep into the Gospel of Matthew. And so these last 2 days, Jesus has been in the temple. He has been confronted by the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and he's been preaching and teaching in parables and talking about the kingdom of heaven. And we left off yesterday with Jesus now asking a question of them. Remember, they've been asking him questions, trying to test him, trying to set a trap for him. They have not been able to do it. And so we continue on today in chapter 23 as he is in the temple now. Pharisees, Sadducees don't want to question him anymore. But now Jesus is going to turn his attention to his faithful followers. Let's see what he has to say. Chapter 23, verse 1. Religious fashion shows. Now Jesus turned to address his disciples along with the crowd that gathered with them. Now I want you to just picture this for a minute. This isn't just the 12 disciples. I've mentioned this before, that when I say disciples, there were a lot more than 12 that did life with him. There were just 12 that he particularly sent out into the cities to be able to preach and have this particular authority and would one day, yes, be the apostles of the early church. There were a lot of disciples, those who had left behind everything, even though their names may not be mentioned here. There was quite a few that gathered around him. And there were women there also who helped fund his ministry. They get mentioned in other gospels kind of in the later chapters. But we do know that he had those who did life with him every day, who called him rabbi, who gave up everything to follow him. And they continued on. And then there were the crowds that followed him. After he booted out all of those who were taking advantage of the temple by selling offerings at outrageous prices and making it a den of thieves rather than a house of prayer, that there was room now for more people to come in. And so we see the crowds have been gathering. He's been preaching and teaching and ruffling some feathers. And so there's a lot that's been going on there in the temple. And so now, instead of addressing the questions that have been posed, now Jesus, it says, turns his attention to those disciples who've been following him and to the crowds. It says the religious scholars and Pharisees are competent teachers in God's law. You won't go wrong in following their teachings on Moses, but be careful about following them. Wow. They talk a good line, but they don't live it. They don't take it to their hearts and live it out in their behavior. It's all spit and polish veneer. Boy, this is something. Now he's calling out all of these religious pretenders. And he's saying, yeah, they can teach a good word. They can teach you the Torah. They can teach you the law of Moses, but they don't live it. So listen to them when they're teaching you things, but don't look at how they live in order to that be an example of how you should live. It says, instead of giving you God's law as food and drink by which you can banquet on God, they package it in bundles of rules, loading you down like pack animals. They seem to take pleasure in watching you stagger under these loads and wouldn't think of lifting a finger to help. Their lives are perpetual fashion shows, embroidered prayer shawls one day and flowery prayers the next. They love to sit at the head of the table at church dinners, basking in the most important, prominent positions, preening on the radiance of public flattery, receiving honorary degrees, and getting called doctorate and reverend. This is in the Message. So they love to people please. They love for you to flatter them and build their ego. They love to sit in fancy dinners and look, right, the part. Wow. He says, but don't let people do that to you. Put you on a pedestal like that. Wow. He's saying, you see what they like is for people to build them up, puff them up, set them up on a pedestal. He says, don't let people do that to you. Don't let your head get so big and get so high and mighty on your horses Don't do it. It says you all have a single teacher and you are all classmates. Wow. Don't set people up as experts over your life, letting them tell you what to do. Save that authority for God. That is powerful. Let Him tell you what to do. No one else should carry the title of Father. You have only one Father, and He is in heaven. And don't let people maneuver you into taking charge of them. There is only one life leader for you and them, and that's Christ. Wow. He's saying that you shouldn't give anybody else authority over your life but God. You should, above all else, obey God, fear the Lord, live fearing Him rather than man. He's saying that there should be a position so high that God is your Father, that no one else, even your own earthly father, can't even touch that authority in your life. That even if it's forbidden by your earthly father, if God says do it, do it. Now, this is for some of you right now who are being controlled and manipulated maybe in your spiritual walk, okay? You need to take back your authority and understand that God, yes, He allows for covering. He wants us to be submitted one to another. He wants us to honor our earthly authorities and even those authorities that we have spiritually that cover you. But ultimately, the final say, the final word that should be in your life is God's, not man. I don't care what title they have, whether they're pastor, preacher, teacher, reverend, apostle, bishop, come on. Those titles do not matter in comparison to my Father in heaven. And so He's getting them prioritized here because I know for them, this is extremely scary. He is now calling out these religious fakes. He's doing it in the temple where they can hear Him now. And He's saying, don't do what they do. Yeah, they talk a good word. They can preach a good sermon. But let me tell you, behind the scenes, they live like hell. And so He's saying it's not going to be this way with you. You are my disciples. You are my people. Those who follow me will take heed to this. He said there is only one life leader for you and them, and that's Christ. I'm the only way, the truth, and the life. I'm the only one who is able to lead you to life. It says, do you want to stand out? Then step down. Wow. Be a servant. If you puff yourself up, you'll get the wind knocked out of you. But if you're content to simply be yourself, your life will count for plenty. Powerful. How do we stand out? We are servants of the kingdom of heaven. We give our life away. We don't want to be puffed up and our egos built up, because all those things at the end of the day are going to come tumbling down. What we want to do is build things in eternity where they will never come down. Frauds. I've had it with you. You're hopeless, you religious scholars, you Pharisees, frauds. Your lives are roadblocks to God's kingdom. You refuse to enter and won't let anyone else in either. So now He's turning His attention to these people that He says are frauds. You're hopeless, you religious scholars and Pharisees, frauds. You go halfway around the world to make a convert, but once you got him, you make him into a replica of yourselves, double damned. You're hopeless. What arrogant stupidity. You say if someone makes a promise with his fingers crossed, that's nothing. But if he swears with his hand on the Bible, that's serious. What ignorance. Does the leather on the Bible carry more weight than on the skin of your hands? And what about this piece of trivia? If you shake hands on a promise, that's nothing. But if you raise your hand that God is your witness, that's serious? That's ridiculous. Hair splitting. What difference does it make whether you shake hands or raise hands? A promise is a promise. Wow. What difference does it make if you make your promise inside or outside a house of worship? A promise is a promise. God is present, watching and holding you to account regardless. He says there's no way out of it. There's no way out of it. You cross your fingers behind your back. But who sees? God. He says you can't hide from him. And so he takes everything that you say out of your mouth seriously, whether you do or not. But they put these religious frames around what was real and what was not, and what a promise was and what it wasn't. And they made all these other rules that had nothing to do with kingdom and didn't ever acknowledge that God was seeing all of this. He says, you're hopeless. You religious scholars and Pharisees, frauds, you keep meticulous account books, tithing on every nickel and dime you get, but on the meat of God's law, things like fairness and compassion and commitment, the absolute basics. You carelessly take it or leave it. Careful bookkeeping is commendable, but the basics are required. What good does it do if you tithe, but then you don't abide by God's law fully, the words that he's saying, the way to live? It says, do you have any idea how silly you look? Writing a life story that's wrong from start to finish, nitpicking over commas and semicolons. That's powerful. You're hopeless, you religious scholars and Pharisees, frauds. You burnish the surface of your cups and bowls so they sparkle in the sun, while the insides are maggoty with your greed and gluttony. Stupid Pharisee, score the insides, and then the gleaming surface will mean something. You're hopeless, you religious scholars and Pharisees, frauds. You're like manicured grave plots, grass clipped and the flowers bright, but 6 feet down, it's all rotting bones and worm-eaten flesh. People look at you and think you're saints, but beneath the skin, you're total frauds. He is exposing how dead they really are. They are in dead religion. They are nitpicking, and they're overburdening the people with things that don't matter to God. He's like the basics of how to live holy and righteous. You're refusing to give to the people. And yet you're putting more burdens on them so that they can look more like you. And you're actually damning the people to hell when you do that. You're hopeless, you religious scholars and Pharisees, frauds. You build granite tombs for your prophets and marble monuments for your saints. And you say that if you've lived in the days of your ancestors, no blood would have been on your hands. You protest too much. You're cut from the same cloth as those murderers and daily add to the death count. This is powerful. It's revealing to them right now that they're the ones who are putting the death sentence on the prophets who had gone before them, and now Jesus who's standing before them now, because of their refusal to see that he is the Messiah. It says, snakes, reptilian sneaks. Do you think that you can worm your way out of this? Never have to pay the piper. It's on account of people like you that I send prophets and wise gods and scholars generation after generation and generation after generation. You treat them like dirt, greeting them with lynch mobs, hounding them with abuse. Wow. He's saying this is all on your hands. You can't squirm out of this. Every drop of righteous blood ever spilled on this earth, beginning with the blood of that good man Abel, right down to the blood of Zechariah, Barakai's son, whom you murdered at his prayers, is on your head. All this, I'm telling you, is coming down on you, on your generation. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, murderer of prophets, killer of the ones who brought you good news. How often I've ached to embrace your children. The way a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, and you wouldn't let me. And now you're so desolate, nothing but a ghost town. What is there left to say? Only this. I'm out of here soon. And the next time you see me, you'll say, oh, God has blessed him. He's come bringing God's rule. This is powerful because he is letting them know, though they think that they are spotless and they are guiltless in this situation, there is going to be more blood on their hands than they could ever have imagined because of this way in which they have lived. They have lived with their mouth talking one way and behind closed doors living a completely different way. And yet God has seen it all. And now all of this judgment is going to fall upon them. And we see it here as Jesus gives this last rebuke to the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the religious scholars of the day, letting them know where they had fallen short, where they were not able to see that the kingdom had truly come. See you tomorrow, friends.